The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, you're still here. That's good. And Iran shows restraint in its public retaliation, at least its public one, as of last night. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian airplane, a Boeing 737, not the same model, upon takeoff from Tehran last night, crashes, kills 176 people, not sure why. Meanwhile, back in this country, Mitch McConnell claims he has the votes to start a witnessless impeachment trial in the Senate. Nancy Pelosi shoots back, still holding on to impeachment articles. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, before taking a cup of milk and going to bed last night upon hearing of the Iranian missile attack, claimed that Mitch McConnell will be mildly cooperative once he becomes president.
Cutting Medicare and Social Security.
Right. Speaking of which, Trump is looking to cut Social Security disability benefits. Spain's parliament backs a left-wing coalition government, and a new study shows that tax incentives like those offered to Amazon spur no economic growth in the cities that do so. Credo action shudders, while the Trump judicial architect Leonard Leo leads a new conservative slush fund. And HUD to roll back housing desegregation rule started during the Obama administration because, racism's over. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. If you were listening to the program on Friday, and we actually have 2 more interviews that we'll put out today that we did on Friday that I think that we'll release on YouTube probably. When we were talking about Iran, and I can't remember which one did we play on the show on Friday. Who was it, Brendan, that we played on Friday?
Valley Nasser?
Valley Nasser. And what I think was it? I can't. Valley Nasser. Okay. And basically, what we had discussed was it really comes down to what would be the nature of the retaliation by the Iranians to the assassination of Soleimani, and would it be sufficient for the Iranian government in terms of satisfying their constituency, which is the millions of people who were marching, or I should say were participating in the funeral procession for Soleimani, but also measured enough so that Donald Trump did not respond to it. And it appears, as of last night, that at least in terms of what the Iranians are going to do publicly, that is what happened. They fired a series of ballistic missiles into 2 different bases that were at least these bases are quite large, that were not manned. They basically fired them into areas that were empty. Now, it's not inconceivable that there was some coordination through back channels with the United States, frankly. It's not impossible. It's also just as likely that they have enough intelligence resources on the ground in Iraq to know where to put those. But this was all very deliberate. That doesn't mean that the Iranians won't be doing things like, I don't know, putting some type of computer virus into our grid and shutting it down or something. I imagine that would be a little bit more extreme, but it's not
owning us on Twitter.
Owning us on Twitter. But I think there will probably be some other violence that will be less attributable to the Iranians. I mean, these were missiles that were fired from Iran. This was specifically a piece of theater. Obviously, we're going to talk more about this as we go, but we'd like to start the show with something a little bit lighter. Of course, there is nothing right now, but and I have some thoughts on this, and we will get into it, both in terms of like the ridiculous of all of this is. But we are in one of those classic situations where Donald Trump is now being lauded by some in the media for not killing us all. I saved your life. I didn't kill you. And, this is, I have some thoughts on it. I mean, like literally to the point where like, I'm not quite there, Jamie. Don't get too excited, but almost having some anarchist thoughts, but not quite.
I'm listening.
Right, I know. I just said that so to get you focused for the rest of the program. But I'm not quite there. So this happened on Fox News last night. In addition to Sean Hannity, of course, calling for complete destruction of Iran, but not so much that we need to put boots on the ground. You know, that kind of war. The one that exists in like Space Troopers or whatever the hell it is. Starship Troopers. Yeah, it's some type of fantasy world. So here is, it's not Laura Ingraham. It's, what's her name? Shannon Bream. Has got Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Now, you know he's Lieutenant Governor of Texas because he's wearing his Lieutenant Governor outfit. Which is like, I mean, seriously? He does. He looks like some type of park ranger. Like he's like I don't know. And then they apparently, is it not? Oh, it is? It's not? Wow, I was going to say, it looked like they took some guy, it looked like they took Brandon Straka and
Uncle Straka.
And he passed away, and then they sort of embalmed him and put him next to it. But this guy's just some type of former State Department, I don't know, guy who's just there just to, I don't know, look.
Wear a blazer.
Yeah, wear a blazer. And so here is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He's talking about Iran has now apparently tried to infiltrate their Texas state computer system. You know, you recall all the times that he was upset about how many times like Russia did it or anybody else, but this is what he's here for. And the amazing thing is, I mean, look, Donald Trump is nuts. He's nuts. This is what, when you read about like, what would have been like to have been a subject of in an era where, there was a king with syphilis or something like that. I mean, we are living essentially in that era. And the problem is that our system is just not in any way. And I don't know that any system is designed for it. But all of this, all of it, every bit of it, completely unnecessary. And, I mean, to the point where, you start to think that the logic of it is there's just a completely different plane of existence in which this makes sense. But the lieutenant governor of Texas has a slightly different take on this.
So I want to talk about something really interesting that I heard today that was a shocking number to me, Lieutenant Governor. Your governor, Greg Abbott, they're talking about reports from state agencies of up to 10,000 potential cyber intrusions per minute. Is this something that regularly happens for you all, or is this something that
Pause
you
it
think...
for 1 second. Now, what they're obviously talking about is some type of like defense, like a denial of service. DDoS attack from a bunch of like, repeated, like more or less bots. There's not like
10,000 different guys.
There's not 10,000 Iranian IT guys going like, go, 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 go. But of course, they've got to make, this is one dude who, is like, I'm on the Texas desk. And I just, I set it up this morning, and then I go over and I head over to Georgia. That's basically it. But
cyber intrusions per minute. Is this something that regularly happens for you all, or is this something that you think is in somehow related to what's going on overseas?
We were having our domestic terrorism task force quarterly meeting today. And in that meeting, Shannon, it was discussed that in the last 48 hours, that we had seen a tremendous uptick. Now, I will keep classified what we normally get in a minute-per-minute basis from Iran, but we were now able to trace 10,000 scans trying to get into our state systems per minute in the last 48 hours. That's 600,000 per hour, over 16 million per day. And so we are being very watchful for our state, and we're alerting our business community, our oil companies, big corporations, and by the way, for anyone in Texas and anyone in America who wants to learn about what we call cyber hygiene, they can go to dir.texas.gov, dir.texas.gov, to learn some things they can do, because we want to alert everyone to be very prepared, because Iran, obviously, if they're hitting us with 10,000 scans a minute that we know are coming from their country, they may be also attacking us through other proxies from other areas. Then they are serious about trying to get into government and I believe big corporations in this country.
Yeah, and we know they've done it before.
Shannon, can I say something?
Sure.
They've done it before. Can I just say something quickly about tonight? The president has proven once again that he is brilliant at being predictably unpredictable. He's like a master chess player. He always knows many moves ahead of where he is, but his opponents or his enemies never know what he's doing next. And I think tonight Iran is really off balance. My dad used to have a saying with his generation of they don't know to shower or wind their watch, but they used a different word for shower. I think tonight Iran doesn't know to shower or wind their watch, quite frankly.
I think they do know how to select targets across MENA and the entirety of South Asia for the next coming decades. Moron.
And let's be clear here. Like, he is predictable insofar as at the end, at one point he just like wipes all the pieces off the board and that's it, and says we're going to start again. I mean, this is just sheer insanity that we have just crossed. We've crossed into just sort of the Rubicon has been crossed, ladies and gentlemen.
Just to be really put a fine point on it, like Richard Nixon had this madman theory, which meant like we are going to commit genocide and war crimes in Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia, and then we will leverage that to have an arms agreement with the Soviet Union, to open China. Completely immoral, absolutely murderous war criminal, but very coherent strategy. I mean, if you read about like the painstaking process of like, how do they send messages to Mao? How do they lay all the groundwork for this stuff? Like, there is an analog to what they're claiming he's doing. And it is some of the most both utterly immoral, but also very strategic, thinking we've ever seen.
But here's the thing. There is no, I want to get to that. Let me do the ads first, and then I want to get to it because I'm going to need a little time for this. But there is an analog, but there is no geopolitical strategy here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're making a claim that is not based in anything. Richard Nixon didn't go, well, we're going to bomb Laos. Then I'm going to have a press conference. then I'm going to insult Mao.
I don't think he gets that far, to be honest with you. I don't
Of
even
course
think he
that- well, I'm
I don't even
saying
think Trump
just-
gets that far ahead even.
Can you imagine sincerely believing that Trump is some master chess player here? This
that's
guy
the
is
thing.
in charge of a big state.
Or the alternate is having the complete lack of shamelessness that you'll say that. Like, I mean, it's one or the other, and they're both, sort of terrifying prospects. Folks, it's 2020. It's time for us all to quit this business and start fresh. And the way I'm going to do that, or at least the way that I'm going to continue to fantasize about it, is I'm going to head over to Capterra. I've talked about Capterra in the past. It is the free online resource that millions of people use. They use it every month. Find the best software solutions for their businesses. Like I say, they have so many different just categories. They have over like 700 categories of businesses that if you were looking for a new career, that's where I would start. Now, of course, that's not what it's for. What it is for is people who are actually working in these industries or in these businesses, and you can search and compare software that is available for those businesses. And so it helps your business. Capterra helps your business thrive, makes the software buying process and really in discovery process super easy and super effective as possible. It gets you educated as to what the possible downfalls or the upsides of specific softwares are that are relevant for your business, because you have over 1 million reviews from real software users. You can discover everything you need to make an informed decision. Like I say, 700 specific categories of software. You can filter by, features or by pricing or whatever. Compare software side by side. Capterra has all the info and data you need in one place. I'll just sit here and go start it at jail management software. Well, we would get rid of that, right? But janitorial software, Java CMS software, jewelry store management software, job board software. If you want to start your own job board, job costing
I could
software.
see us
I don't even know what
actually
that
doing a
means.
jewelry
Job
store here.
evaluation software. May look into that a little bit. People freaking out around here about that one. Job shop software. I don't even know K through 12 software. If you have a school, Kanban tools. I don't know what that means. I'm looking at that right now. Kanban. It's so there's like Kanban product management. I'm like, I don't even know what this stuff means. But there's people out there who are listening, and I'm looking at how many different software there are for Kanban, and I can't even count. 30, 40. I don't know what. Can someone look up what Kanban means? Like, that's how deep this stuff goes, folks.
It's Kanban is a scheduling system for lean manufacturing and just-in-time manufacturing.
Boom. There you go. Visit capterra.com/majority right now for free today to find the tools to make an informed software decision for your business. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA.com/majority. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra, software selection simplified. Also, if you're like me, you have no time to do anything. But you do realize sometimes you look yourself in the mirror, say, I could use a little self-improvement. Well, Blinkist is for anybody who cares about learning but doesn't have a lot of time. Blinkist takes the key insights from over 3,000 nonfiction bestsellers in over 27 categories, condenses them down into 15-minute blinks. They're text and audio explainers to help you understand more about the core ideas of each book. You use blinks to get to a topic quickly, you find new topics to grow from, figure out which books you want to spend more time with, listen on the go, listen on your commute, listen while you're at the gym, or even download to listen offline. Blinkist is fantastic. We're talking about changing careers for me personally, The ones that I'm looking at now, they have a couple bestsellers. I mean, I've talked in the past about, my Tim Ferriss obsession and that 80-20 stuff and the 4-hour work week and that stuff. I've learned a lot from that, actually, but I'm frankly not going to spend a lot of time doing it. That's one of the things I learned with the 80-20 thing. I'm not going to spend 80% of my time learning 20% of my material. I'll do the opposite. I'll spend 20% of my time learning 80% of what I need to.
Boom. Math.
And here, there's a couple that I'm eyeing, and I may just end up listening tomorrow on my walk to work. I could listen to 2 if I wanted to. One is, The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi.
I would, maybe another one could be prioritized.
I might want to prioritize. It might be, I may get back to How to Win Friends and Influence People.
There you go.
But right now, I'm thinking also Everything is Effed. A book about hope is up there, or Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. They have history books. They have all sorts of nonfiction. They have some how-tos. And right now, Blinkist has a special offer for just our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Start your 7-day free trial. And if you decide after 7 days, which I imagine you might, then probably will, you'll get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Majority Report to get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Check it out, folks. Improve yourself and do so quickly. All right, let's get into this. First, I just want to start with just sort of the basis of this. I've had half a dozen people I know, friends, I guess you refer to them as, who have contacted me with the exact same question. They're mostly friends, but there are people who are like sort of more acquaintances, because I get, in situations like this, I hear from a lot of people. What are you telling your kids? Because my daughter on Friday texted me during the show, "Are we going into World War III?" And I thought, all right, this is my daughter. She's just a little bit anxious. And apparently, like, all the kids are freaking out. All the kids. Some kids who are like 7, some kids who are 6, some kids who are 14. And I saw this thing, and so, I immediately, I search it to see, like, is there any psychiatrists or psychologists who are putting out stuff? And there's some, and it's sort of generic, but there was one in Time magazine, How to Talk to Your Kids About the Situation with Iran. And frankly, I didn't find it terribly helpful. And then I found it really despicable in some respects. And I don't know who wrote this. I don't have it at the top of my page now, so I don't care. Who cares? Why don't the U.S. and Iran get along? The U.S. and Iran have a difficult relationship. It's been this way for many years. Now, for anybody who knows a respectable amount of history, like, let's say, someone who's a journalist who's writing in a magazine about the topic of why don't the U.S. and Iran get along, you would know that really you would start this probably in the early 50s when it's possible you could go before then, but I think, like, in terms of the modern era, when the CIA basically orchestrated a coup to get rid of Moghadesh, who was the Iranian president, prime minister, and was a little bit too socialistic-y for the United States. They were a little worried about his oil. And so they engaged in a coup, got rid of him, replaced him with the Shah, who turned out to be rather dictatorial and oppressive, and a king. And then ultimately exiled this guy, Ayatollah Khomeini, in a way to sort of like tamp down, I guess, any type of religious, and not just fervor, but any type of like social structures that would compete with his dictatorial regime. And because the United States was so closely associated with the Shah, gave him support, material support, obviously put him into office, if you want to call it office. That takes us up to where Time magazine starts. In 1979, Iran took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. They were released after 44 days. So it's been this way for many years. In 1979, Iran, that's where it started. Just like, wow, that's weird of Iran. Why would they do that?
Not cool, guys.
Not cool. Just
Bad luck.
randomly do this?
Totally unprovoked.
Okay. So we've established we cannot tell our kids, look, and you know, listen, I'm going to try and be as sort of gentle about this as possible. Back in the old days, you know, put aside for a moment Venezuela and what's going on in Bolivia and et cetera, et cetera. Back in the old days, we would interfere with other countries' governments, and what we did was wrong, and then it took 25 years to metastasize, and they ended up there was a revolution there, and because of the United States rule and its the symbolism. They held 50 some odd of our diplomats hostage. And after a year and a half, they released them. Now, we're not going to get into Solly. I'm not going to get into the role that Ronald Reagan played in keeping them in there and some other powerful interest that actually kept them in there as a way of leveraging an election. We'll talk about that when you get a little older.
The fact that we sold chemical weapons to Saddam while he was gassing them.
Exactly. Well, that comes a little later. That comes later. And then they just go from 1979 to 2018. Tensions increased again after President Trump said the U.S. would no longer participate in a 2015 deal with Iran. Well, at least they got that. Now, no longer participate is really not the right word, but okay. This international agreement, in other words, this international agreement set strict limits for 15 years on Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. In return, the U.S. and countries in the European Union agreed to end trade restrictions. In other words, they decided to not starve the country. When Trump pulled out of the agreement, the U.S. put trade restrictions back in place. This has hurt Iran's economy. So, in other words, I understand that you're too young to understand that it's making people, sicker and hungrier and poorer. But I'm just going to use the word economy because you're 6. That presentation of history by a writer at Time magazine, whomever it is, and maybe it's some 22-year-old who has no idea of the history and they can't go further back than 1979 because that's ages ago. And they couldn't be bothered to Google because people are writing about it all the time anyways. That is why we have this sort of like complete credulity. Why we have a press that right now will go after Sanders and Warren and Corbyn and anybody who hesitates or who says the word assassinate or doesn't say the word terrorist when we're talking about Soleimani. If Soleimani is a terrorist for killing, just by the nature of being a general, because he is a general in a military, and he has no doubt killed hundreds, if not, I would imagine as a general, like you're not doing your job if you're not killing thousands and you've been engaged in war. I don't know how many civilians he's killed. He's certainly probably been responsible, at least as a general is, for the killing of U.S. Military personnel. But there was a piece in the Times reminding people of what happened in 1988 when the Navy warship, the Vincennes, was chasing after an Iranian warship and went into Iranian coastal space. And apparently the guy who was running that warship, I don't know what you call him, captain, I guess, guy named Rogers, saw an airliner that was coming. Now, they say they accidentally shot it down, an Iranian airliner. It killed 290 civilians, 65 of whom were children. A subsequent study of this by the Navy found that none of the things that Rogers claimed were the case with this airliner happened. That it was outside of commercial airline lanes. It was in commercial airline lanes. It was the Vincennes that was disoriented. The idea that it was diving towards the Vincennes also found to be not true. The idea that it didn't have communications, also not true. They were so trigger happy, they shot this thing down and killed 300 Iranian civilians. Now, I want folks to contemplate what we did when non-state actors attacked our country and killed 3,000 civilians. We went into war for 18 years in 2 different countries. We killed hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands of people. Soleimani apparently oversaw the Quds attempt to blow up the car of the wife of the Vincennes captain in Washington, D.C. She survived. This goes back and forth. If we're going to assassinate, if it's on the table that we can assassinate people who represent a potential challenge to the United States or a potential threat to our military personnel, the list is going to be endless. And if we can do that, then other countries can do that. And that endless list will include a lot of our top officials too. This is why it's not done. This is why we don't go around and assassinate leaders anymore. At least not publicly. At least not in such a way that we're bragging about it. Because it's incredibly destabilizing. And to do so with absolutely no reason. And why do I say we have no reason? Because we have heard not a reason from our government, but like multiple ones that are inconsistent with each other. Let's start with reason number one that we did this, given to us by Mike Pompeo this Sunday. And when I say this, I mean assassinate Soleimani. Look, Soleimani is a piece of crap. Just like in the same way that every military person is a piece of crap.
Yeah, and I want to flip that just really quickly. You could either say that's completely fair and valid, or you could just say, like, and maybe we'll play it later, what General McChrystal said, which we played last night. It's like, I think he's a patriot. I think he has his own, patriotism, and he's fighting for his country.
Of course,
just like
General
I am.
McChrystal said it.
Well,
exactly.
because he has the self-awareness to recognize that they're the same thing.
Yes.
They're and if we're going to have all this melodrama, we either need to decide that this is collectively wrong across the board or not have the melodrama.
Right. Is this McChrystal?
Trust the political
okay. Here's McChrystal saying that
this
right
is
now.
important.
I don't think we should view him as an evil person. I think we should view him just like I believe in my country. I think Qasem Soleimani believes in his country. Just as I would propagate, the aims of mine, he would do his.
Yeah, all right, so there's the bottom line. Now, of course, McChrystal's going to say this because McChrystal doesn't want to be held to the same standard where he could be assassinated either. Right? I mean, that's why McChrystal wants to be able to go on to the board of whatever, Grantham Northup or Raytheon or whoever he is.
Teach at Yale.
Or whatever it is, wherever he's making all his cash from some military the military-industrial complex. He wants to be able to do that without having a fear that he can be assassinated. So, of course, he's going to go out there and say that. And fine, God bless him. But here's Mike Pompeo on Fox News Sunday describing, like, we've got to make this into an imminent attack, right? Like, I'm trying to think what this reminds me of. Let's not let the smoking gun be a mushroom cloud. But here is Mike Pompeo spreading the oldest lie in the book.
President Trump says that General Soleimani was planning a, quote, imminent attack against Americans. You have said it was a, quote, big action that could potentially kill hundreds of American diplomats and soldiers. What was the plan? Who were the targets, and how soon?
Yes, President Trump was right in what he said, so was I. We'll share all the intelligence that we can. I was the CI director for a little while, Chris. There's things we simply cannot make public about what it is we knew at that time and what, in fact, we know today about the continuing activity. I think General Milley got it right when he said we would have been culpably negligent had we not gone after Soleimani when we had the opportunity. He was actively engaged in plotting against American interests. We need to look no further than what he had personally done over the days before that, where an American was killed on December 27th. There's no surprise. There's plenty of public evidence about the bad behavior of Qasem Soleimani. He was a designated terrorist, and we did the right thing.
Okay, so you see how it just even over the course of his answer, it evolved. First of all, it's a potential that could kill a lot of Americans. American diplomats, a potential. Well, there was potential last night when they lobbed those missiles, but they knew what they were doing. They didn't do it. Soleimani had responded to the killing of 25 Iranian militia people from the day before. They've been going back and forth, tit for tat. So if Pompeo's the killing of one U.S. contractor, and I don't want anybody to die, but if that becomes the litmus test as to whether you can assassinate a military personnel, well then whoever ordered the bombing that killed the 25 Iranians, well, aren't they subject now to the same thing? But that is the argument on day 1. Let's go to day 4 and listen to what Mike Esper, the Secretary of Raytheon, of the Department of Defense of Raytheon, has to say that it wasn't so much that there was an imminent attack. It was more like that it was, well, here.
Jeff Schobel. Thank you. Can you clarify, the attack Soleimani was planning, was that days or weeks away?
I think it's more fair to say days, for sure.
And is the U.S. legally obliged to withdraw from Iraq if told by the Iraqi government to go?
I'm not going to speculate. We're not there yet. There's been none of that has happened to the best of my knowledge. And as those events unfold, we'll address them and we'll have all the right legal experts.
Now, of course, saying days or weeks, here's something that I think hopefully you don't have to be an English major to understand. That I could live to the ripe old age of 110, and that will be still days away. We are now on day 5 of the attack that apparently was so imminent, so planned. Everything was there. Like, are we really to believe that the Iranian government doesn't have somebody who can step in and go like, oh yeah, that attack that we was planned, do it. We're 5 days away. If we can't say weeks.
It meant the attack on the credibility of the president to wage war on behalf of the Gulf states was at stake because he was going to Iraq. Like, it's really important to look, if there's contradictory reporting that comes out, we'll follow it. But as far as we know, based off of senior Iraqi politicians and the fact that he was traveling on a commercial airliner, every indication is that this specific trip was a diplomatic initiative to back channel to Saudi Arabia
that was supposedly
through
started
Iraq.
by Trump. that was supposedly started by Trump, by what he said to the Iraqi prime minister. But here's Pompeo on that same day having a different concept of what imminent means. For Mike Esper, imminent means days away, even though he was days away from when Soleimani was killed. When he said that, Pompeo has a slightly different take on imminent. Imminent has to do with what has actually already taken place. Here we go.
Finally, there's been much made about this question of intelligence and imminence. I answered it multiple times on Sunday. I'm happy to walk through it again. Anytime a president makes a decision of this magnitude, there are multiple pieces of information that come before us. We presented that to him in all its broad detail. We gave him all the best information that came not only from the intelligence community, but for those of us who have teams in the field. We evaluated the relevant risks and the opportunity that we thought might present itself at some point. And we could see clearly that not only had Soleimani done all of the things that we have recounted, right? Hundreds of thousands, a massacre in Syria, enormous destruction of countries like Lebanon and Iraq, where they've denied them sovereignty in the
Pause it. I just want to note something, that he is actually saying that one of the black marks against Soleimani is the destruction he wreaked in Iraq.
Also, like the Fox News article from a couple days ago of the chart being like, Iran spends a lot of money on defense expenditure while their people suffer economic consequences.
Countries like Lebanon and Iraq, where they've denied them sovereignty, and the Iranians have really denied people in those two countries.
Pause it. And incidentally, also denying of sovereignty. There's a lot of people who say that you are infringing upon our sovereignty for bombing us to assassinate somebody else.
In Syria, enormous destruction of countries like Lebanon and Iraq, where they've denied them sovereignty, and the Iranians have really denied people in those two countries what it is they want, right? Sovereignty, independence, and freedom. This is all Soleimani's handiwork. And then we'd watch as he was continuing the terror campaign in the region. We know what happened at the end of last year in December, ultimately leading to the death of an American. So if you're looking for imminence, you needn't look no further than the days that led up to the strike that was taken against Soleimani. And then you, in addition to that, have what we could clearly see were continuing efforts on behalf of this terrorist to build out a network of campaign activities that were going to lead potentially to the death of many more Americans.
They keep throwing that word potentially in there because, really anything has the potential to kill Americans, right? Like, I did an ad for, a hot dog today. You could choke on it. Potentially has the ability to harm an American. They keep saying the word potential in there, which you wouldn't need to say that unless you were trying to provide yourself some measure of wiggle room in case you ever, anybody ever blew the whistle on this. You wouldn't need to say potential, because potential is embedded in the fact of anything that has that has not happened yet. It has the potential for anything to happen. And so the idea that we can look at the word imminence, which is the state or fact of being about to happen, that evidence of something about to happen is stuff that happens prior to stuff about to happen, is absurd. It's absurd. This is just jibber jabbish. Does anybody think that if there was any substantial threat to U.S. interests, that these guys would be hesitant to put it out there? I mean, give me a break. This is a joke. Donald Trump, for whatever reason, these lunatics thought this would be a good idea. And here's the point. There's no operational value to this. There's no one who's out there making the case that in any way this is going to save lives. There's no one out there saying that, now that Soleimani is no longer general, there's no more generals in the Iranian army. Now that Soleimani is not the general, there's no more coordination of militias, franchisees. No one's even bothering to make that case. No one's even bothering to make the dumb argument that Americans are safer today. It's absurd. It's absurd. It's an absurd argument to make. No one's even bothering trying to do it. They're just saying like this. We brought this guy to justice. This guy who we hadn't even mentioned for years. That the vast majority of Americans had no idea about. This guy who was a military general. And, everybody knows that this is a function of deteriorating relationship with Iran that has been completely orchestrated and completely unnecessary. And even the fact that Iran could exercise some measure of discretion. Now, obviously, they don't want to get into a war with us because while it will be a horror show for us, it will be a greater horror show for them. That's just the reality of it. And, the idea that there are people in the administration going, we finally got rid of Soleimani. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change the trajectory of history one iota. The idea that both countries, and I don't even mean the countries, I mean like the people. The idea that there are people in this country whose kids are texting them from school or coming home from school at 6 years old and say, we're going to have World War III. The idea that the amount of just sort of like anxiety that the people of this country, the people of Iran, the people of Iraq, who have suffered just relentlessly.
They're the ones who died last night, incidentally.
No, as far as I know, no one died.
I think Iraqi civilians have died.
According to the reports today, no one died. But the general notion that people need to live under this amount of anxiety, and frankly, it benefits both governments, right? I mean, it benefits the supreme leader, because now everybody's rallying around what was, sort of reform movements and protests that were taking place in Iran are now, of course, quashed and co-opted and subsumed because of a nationalism and a patriotism that happens when you get attacked.
Yeah,
and it helped Donald Trump because Donald Trump is facing impeachment, and he thinks that it somehow makes him more masculine, or it achieves, whatever sort of slight of Obama he wanted to, or whatnot. It is all done at the expense of people. And this was my point about, sort of like, feeling somewhat anarchist sympathetic today. When you see the people in power who get value out of just putting us through this crap, both sets of leadership see value in putting us through this crap, this worthless, insane, never mind we want to talk about potential for killing American servicemen. Every action that Donald Trump and that Mike Pompeo put us through has the potential to kill American personnel and Iraqi personnel and Iranian personnel and people. It all has the potential for that. Potential for mass killings. So if that is the measure, then that guy should be subject to a legitimate assassination. And so this is all just, it's shocking. And as much as all of this is grotesque, the ability of these frickin' lunatics to get away with this stuff, because the people who don't directly benefit from it sort of nod their heads okay. What has happened in the past 24 hours or 48 hours or 5, 6 days? Whether it's I saw some statement from Jack Reed, Democrat from Rhode Island, saying something to the effect of if they've struck us, we're going to have to strike back.
It's going to be hard not to.
I want to show you, last night I was on Chris Hayes' program, and I thought I was going to get bumped, because usually in these situations,
Can I just interject something really quickly, because I think it's potentially relevant to what you're about to say, which is that there's some type of inevitability to this, even as of this morning, Trump has actually, in fact, de-escalated, although new economic sanctions are going to be horrible. But, Pepe Escobar, who's a writer for Asia Times, there's a lot of sources in this area and, could be wrong, but he's a credible reporter. He's reporting that basically that people from Trump administration approached the Qatari royal family, that's like an Iranian back channel, and essentially were like, one of two options they offered Iran was, can you do something like this? Can you do a proportional response? Yes, and then we will stand down. The Iranian foreign minister, Zarif, who's the English-speaking, public face, literally used the phrase proportional response to describe what they did. And then Trump did exactly what he did this morning, which for all the bluster is a de-escalation. And that's just important to note because even people like Jack Reed were saying it was an inevitability.
Yes,
no, this is important.
Well, I understand. That's the point I'm trying to make. I've prepped some stuff here. So the idea that we are that there is some type of notion of inevitability, that this is all set in stone, right? So last night I go to Hayes and I'm waiting to go on, and this guy who we last heard of when he was out there, making millions of dollars off of Howard Schultz in his brief barista essentially, coming on MSNBC to tell us that this is set in stone. This is at the point we don't know if there's any casualties. The missiles have been launched onto U.S. military bases in Iraq, a country that we illegally invaded and occupied for over a decade. The missiles are launched. He doesn't know if there's anybody been killed, but let's assume that there are been 10 U.S. casualties. 5 U.S. casualties, 5 Iraqi casualties. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, the idea that this is all about physics. There's no decision-making involved in this. Think about the implications throughout this entire thing as this guy's saying this.
Then devastating consequences. Joining me now, Steve Schmidt, Republican strategist and MSNBC contributor, and I just feel like we did not need to be at this point.
The genie is certainly out of the bottle now.
Pause
watching this when
the genie is out of the bottle. It's impossible to put the genie back into the bottle. It does not stop. The genie is out of the bottle. This is just physics now. Somebody took a bowling ball, rolled it down a hill.
Republican strategist and MSNBC contributor, and I just feel like we did not need to be at this point.
The genie is certainly out of the bottle now. Watching this, when you think about history and you think about momentous events, and we look back, for example, a year in Vietnam, did that occur in 65 or 66? And the memory doesn't quite get there, but history unfolds in real time, going forward, action by action, event by event, day by day. And we're at the early stages of a hot war. It is Do
you understand this guy's vision of how things work? That history unfolds. It's completely in the passive voice. No one's making a decision here. This is inevitable. Time marches on. This is not time. At every single step of this way, someone is making a decision. And these are not decisions that are simply made like in a panic. These are calculated decisions to bring results. And as far as this guy would have it, it is completely out of our hands. It's out of our hands as citizens. It's out of our hands as, people who have access to millions of people that they're talking to. It's out of our hands as a general, or out of our hands as the Secretary of Defense or the president. It's out of our hands. And this is the way. Remember, these are the guys who came out of the whole thing of like, you're in part of the reality-based community. We create our own reality. We put facts on the ground that cause other things to happen because we know that we can steamroll the will of other human beings, so much so that we can pretend that we're not even doing that, that it's physics that is doing that, that is history doing it. that it's time doing it. There's no decisions that are going on in this guy's mind.
Going forward, action by action, event by event, day by day. And we're at the early stages of a hot war. It is a monumental moment that the Iranian military has launched a ballistic missile attack against U.S. military personnel on Iraqi bases in Iraq. It is almost certain that there will be a response from the United States. I think the analysis that from the Iranian perspective, the symbolism of the attack, the importance of this attack for Iran's domestic political situation is the same here. Donald Trump simply politically is not in a position to not be able to escalate from here.
Pause it. So, here's the amazing thing about it. In addition to his whole assessment of how history unfolds, the idea that there's no agency amongst human beings, he's also completely wrong. I mean, he's just like, even on his own terms, he's wrong. But that's not the point. The point that this guy had no idea what he was talking about and was willing to talk about it in this way is not the point. The point is that the vision, the analytical framework, and it's not just him. This is all across your TV and all across the the press and all across the foreign policy establishment. This is the way it works. Can't in any way stop this.
There is no alternative.
There is no alternative. It's just you drop a bowling ball from the top of a hill, it rolls down, and that's it.
That's how they manufacture consent for this stuff.
To be fair, Hayes pushed back on this. Let's just let it roll out a little bit, because I think he was a little bit taken aback from this, and then we'll go.
Donald Trump simply politically is not in a position to not be able to escalate from here. So we're at a...
First of all, that's also, stop it again, that's also stupid. Because Donald Trump, from a political standpoint, realizes that if he goes into a war, he's effed. He's effed. There are other people in the White House who want a war. But if Donald Trump gets us into a war with Iran, based upon what everybody who is sentient knows, that either started the day he said, okay, assassinate Soleimani, or the day he said, let's pull out of this deal with Iran. If anybody thinks that it was going to go down and the inciting factor was that Iran landed some missiles on 2 bases in a country that we shouldn't have been in the first place, and a dozen military personnel died. Are you serious? That's going to be the monarch? No, that's not what people are going to remember.
To not be able to escalate from here. So we're at a very dangerous moment now.
Although I don't want to take away the agency here, because I mean, one of the things that I think we've learned over 19 years, the longest period of war in the Republic's history,
absolutely.
19 years, we still, Mark Esper today talked about finishing wars, where we don't want to start when we're finishing one. We're still in Afghanistan right now, of course. Yes. I had a flashback as I watched these news reports to coming home from a basketball game in 6th grade and to watch missiles over Iraq in 1991, when I was 12 years old. So 30 years.
Exact same thought for me.
30 years of missiles into that country, 30 years of that each individual discrete action, at some point someone has to stop and make a decision to not. And the attack on Soleimani was retribution for the embassy storming. That was retribution for the airstrike that killed 25 Shia militia members, which was retribution for a rocket attack that killed 1 American contractor. That there has to be a decision by the U.S. as a democratic society, not just the president, not just the person watching cable news and thinking about what saving face, about whether we are going to enter into a hot war with Iran.
We've entered into a hot war with Iran. American personnel are under attack by Iranian ballistic missiles right now as we speak. This has been wrought by the judgment of a president who was very clear over the course of the campaign that he knows more than all of the generals. We have seen the diplomatic corps of the United States utterly gutted over the last 3 years. We have policy made by tweet, by watching Fox and Friends. There is no indication except in...
Pause it. I would also add that if you want to talk about this is a decision that's wrought, it's also wrought by commentary just like this. By the people who are ostensibly opposed to this. The idea that there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. It's done. It's baked into the cake. It exists. It's absurd. It's incredibly dangerous. And I will say this, like, you know, I did come on. I want to just play this one clip because right before I came on, I saw Joe Biden tweet out. And to be fair, I mean, nobody came out with a contemporaneous. None of the Democratic presidential candidates came out with anything. In fact, Nancy Pelosi came out with something that was at least fairly decent. But Joe Biden, who is, you know, running on his calm and steady, like I can respond to a crisis, tweets out, me and my wife are going to bed. Well, we'll talk about this in the morning. I don't think he said, well, I'm going to bed. He said, I'm going to hold off on commenting on the news tonight until we know more. But there is one thing I will say. See, look, you don't comment on the news. That's not what your job is. Your job's not even to comment on the facts. There's only two scenarios here that Joe Biden is facing at 8:37 p.m. last night. That is, the missiles have killed, let's just say 24 U.S. military personnel, or they've killed nobody. There's two scenarios. What should we do? Well, I'm going to take a nap. Jill and I are going to think about the troops. We're going to take some more milk. We're going to go to bed.
It was very much past his bedtime.
Well, yes. But this is the type of cowardice that is stunning to me. Like in 2002, we're months out from a major attack on this country that had everybody on pins and needles. If somebody had walked into Macy's with a stick of dynamite and blown themselves up, half of New York would have emptied out in the months after 9/11. Half of New York. If you go upstate, you go out to Long Island, they would call new people 9/11ers. People had moved out of the city. And the Democratic politicians were like deer in the headlights. And everybody else was too. But now we're 20 years out from that. And the Democratic politicians, for the most part, are like deers in the headlights. But the American public is not there. I mean, it's stunning to me. Here, just play this. This is the only thing I had to say for the most part on MSNBC last night.
It's just crazy to me to view what's happening right now as this thing that's just happening out there in the world. Like we live in a democratic society precisely so that we can exert some control, and that's part of constitutional design. I mean, by design, the founders, it's constitutional design that there is some democratic control.
Right. I mean, the idea that regardless of what we have in terms of casualties, that we must respond is absurd. We have agency. People are going to call for de-escalation. They're either going to call for it now, tonight, or they're going to do it 18 years from now, after what we've been in Iraq. And so the bottom line is every single Democratic presidential candidate should tonight come out and say no war with Iran. Every single member of the Democratic caucus in the House and the Senate should be backing the bills by Tim Kaine and by Sanders and Khanna in the House and stopping funding and stopping the legal auspices for this war.
In some ways, this feels...
And there it is. I mean, it's terrifying that they did not. It's terrifying that they did not. That they're just going to let the president decide, I'm going to continue to provoke a war until enough of the commentariat say it's inevitable. That's That's just effed up.
I mean, how did you not jump over the table and strangle that Schmidt guy? He's such a slime ball.
I was outside of the studio pacing and texting people just to sort of make sure that my people associated with the show, to make sure that they understood my feelings.
We kept trying to explain to Sam that we didn't control the booking. It was really weird. Like, Sam, calm down. We hope you get on.
No, it was
also. I will just say,
not this show.
Yeah,
I was texting people associated with the show that was in process. I have
Steve Schmidt worked really hard on that final project.
I don't do a very good job of not communicating my dissatisfaction in those moments, particularly with the barista. As soon as he came out, I just he saw the back of my head. And look, here's the bottom line. This is why the Never Trumpers. Now look, MSNBC made a pivot 3 or 4 years ago where they started to hire Republicans. They hired Megyn Kelly. They hired Hugh Hewitt. They hired Greta Van Susteren. I don't know if people, for some reason, like people, this is like gone down the memory hole. This was all public. There are plenty of news reports and on what the intention was. And there are still, and they got rid of a lot of their contributors who were anything but former Republicans. This is before Russiagate or whatever you want to call it. This happened prior to that. And then it was just a natural national progression to hiring contributors who were, former prosecutors and whatnot, in anticipating, these investigations of the president, which were obvious, right? Like, when the president fires the FBI head and says, like, I got rid of him because he was investigating me. Yeah, there's a good reason to believe that a media outlet that you're going to want to probably bring in some prosecutors. I wouldn't necessarily have brought in the national security people, whatnot. I don't know if I would even bring in those prosecutors. That's not the point. The point is the embracing, just because they show up on MSNBC, of Never Trumpers, Republicans who were just in the wrong, it's like one industry and just multiple businesses within an industry. Pepsi, Coke. Coke got the contract. They're in the cafeteria. I work for Pepsi. I'm pissed. That doesn't mean if you're someone who doesn't want sugar in your drinks that you should embrace Pepsi because they don't like Coke. So the David Frums, the barista like this guy, here's Jennifer Rubin. And I think she's probably the best of them, frankly. She's probably the best of them. And still, you get her tweeting out last night, it could be worse. Bolton could still be at the National Security Council. But back in December of 2016, she was calling for someone, if not Bolton himself, someone very much like him, to be the ideal number 2 at State Department.
Yikes.
Back in 2011, she was saying, get John Bolton to run for president.
Double yikes.
Scroll down. Back in 2014, John Bolton's success, a reflection and accelerator of a more hawkish GOP, and hopefully a smarter one. Everybody knew who John Bolton was in 2016, in 2014, in 2011. He was so much of a lunatic that when George W. Bush nominated him to be the ambassador to the UN back in 2004, maybe I think it was 2004, maybe it was 2005, that a Republican Senate, a Republican-controlled Senate, would not approve his nomination. He had to be installed with a temporary, a recess appointment. So everybody knew. Everybody knew who John Bolton was. Now, I don't know if Jennifer Rubin just somehow saw the light sometime between 2017 and 2019 about John Bolton, or if it just became, and it's possible. It's possible she did. But I'm sorry. Like, at what point? I remember the day that John Bolton's name came up. I was at MSNBC that day. And they had somebody on to say, like, he's normal Republican establishment State Department. They did. And I got on my phone again and got in there and said, no, he's a lunatic. The bottom line is, you promote David Frum because he says Donald Trump is an a-hole, and then all of a sudden we're looking at attacking Iran, and now you have built this guy up as some type of voice of reason. And it's inevitable. We have to strike back. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. And fortunately, the Iranians are smart enough and measured enough in their response to avoid a war. And of course, I think Donald Trump is frankly smart enough to know that he doesn't want a war because it's not going to help him. But the idea of putting us all through this type of anxiety, it's just a way that they maintain power.
I just want to add two really quick things. I would look up, it's worth reading George Voinovich in May 12, 2005, the full transcript of why he voted against Bolton. He was the Republican who sunk him on the committee. That's worth reading. But the other
thing...
From
Ohio, right, Voinovich?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, this also, though, shows how stupid they are in terms of their calculations. Because I think the other thing that was going on here was that they've been waging a full economic war against Iran. They have no understanding, and there's tons of dissatisfaction inside Iran. That does not mean that anybody wants some type of outside orchestrated coup or invasion. And I think they legitimately confuse labor uprisings for, hey, we can assassinate this guy, destabilize them. They're already pissed about the economy. And maybe this is, I think this is a somewhat of a version of they will welcome us with flowers moment in terms of their calculation.
Oh,
but it got, obviously completely reversed because they have no understanding what the dynamics of this place are.
I mean, what Soleimani meant to people, Felix from Chapo did a little episode about this, and he quoted an Iranian American journalist that he was friends with, who said his dad is a communist and an atheist, and he loved Soleimani because what he represented to him was somebody out there fighting U.S. imperialism and owning them in Iraq. So the galvanizing effect and the suppression of dissent that was going on against the state there cannot be understated.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break, head into the fun half. Folks, you can support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. It is your support that helps us continue to do this show. Also, the AM Quickie, it's available at amquickie.com. You can get both of those on the app, majorityapp.com, and justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Last night was Tuesday. Michael, what happened?
Well, we did our best to respond to what was happening with Iran in real time, and luckily we had a lot of resources to do it. So first we talked with Drew Mikhael from Belfast University about how also these dynamics will undermine the emerging social movements, particularly in Lebanon, that are trying to transition out of these sectarian divisions and deal with the underlying issues in the region. Matt Christman was great. We had we just had a really wide-ranging conversation. I can't summarize all of it. And I spent a lot of time really looking at the differences between Shia and Sunni politics that emerged in the 80s. So a lot of ground covered. You can watch it all on Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. We're under 1,000 subs away from our first 100,000 subs, so go hit the subscribe button. Patreon.com/TMBS on Patreon to get everything. And please go see us February 7th at the Bell House. Grab your tickets. Link on the homepage.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, we just released part 3 of our epic 3-part recap of the decade that was. So we close it out with 2015 till now. Our guest Jake Flores gives a grand unified theory of the black and blue dress, or was it white and gold? Speaking of things that change colors, Rachel Dolezal, remember her? We had Trump's epic ponage of Hillary and all of us, if you recall, in 2016. The rise of the hashtag resistance. We got a little bit sincere at the end. It was great. Check it out. Patreon.com/The Antifada.
On Literary Hangover, patrons will be able to listen to a half hour of me reading The Sotweed Factor, a satirical poem by Ebenezer Cook from 1708. And that's going to be the episode for everybody on Saturday. Me and Alex will be talking about it. So if you want to check that out early, get the text of me reading it, because nobody's read it before. But now it's read. So
nobody's read it?
Nobody's read it for public domain or even for sale audiobook. So I'm the first voice. My voice is immortalized in this poem.
That's sort of amazing.
I know. Yep. So I'm going to be the voice of colonial poetry.
Oh, mazel tov.
We'll see about that. Now we may see some competition. Now people racing into that market.
Oh, I'd welcome it.
Competition will start kicking in.
Yeah, so patreon.com/literary hangover.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck em.
Almost says what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
pussy.
All right, folks, welcome to the fun half. Let's go right to the phones. Calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Thomas. I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Thomas from Los Angeles. What's on your mind, Thomas?
Well, I just want to say that I did not expect myself to be calling in and agree with so much of what you said on the show so far, but I'm an anarcho-capitalist, and I'm calling in to debate with you because I feel that taxation is theft and governments are inherently immoral.
Hi.
And the reason that I initially went down this road was from an anti-war perspective.
Okay, well, how does taxation being theft, why is that necessary to believe to be anti-war?
Because taxation is used to pay for war. The income tax first started to fund war.
Okay, and do they have to? I mean, they also pay for other things too, right? I mean, they don't have to. That's just a decision that we as a people allow to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily. Are you allowing the war or the stuff that's going on in Iran and Iraq right now to happen? Are you allowing that?
Well, no, but I'm also not allowing stock buybacks either, and that's happening. I mean,
what's wrong with stock buybacks?
What's wrong with stock buybacks? It is a manipulation of the stock market. It is I mean, to the extent that it used to be illegal, so much so 40 years ago, prior to 40 years ago.
I mean, without using, appeals to authority like something being legal or illegal, what's immoral about a company buying pieces of their own company back?
What's immoral about it? Well, a company only. What is a company? What defines a company?
A group of people, putting together and providing goods and services for society.
No. What's a company? What do you need to be a company? To be incorporated?
Oh, well, that's a government enforced thing. I mean,
correct.
The idea of incorporation only exists as a legal shield of liability for the business owners to prevent them from, having their own assets seized in the case of bankruptcy or things like that.
Correct.
A corporation is inherently government agreement. Corporations are protected by government. You remove government, corporations don't exist. You just have people providing voluntary goods and services to the society.
Correct. And, of course, you wouldn't have a stock market, right? I mean, how would you enforce that? How would you enforce the contracts that were involved in a stock market?
Well, we would be getting into theoretical territory because something like this hasn't ever existed, but you could certainly provide, a dispute resolution organization, for example, if there is a demand.
What would be their source of authority?
The market.
The market would be the source of authority for a dispute resolution? How does that work? Like, you mean like for instance, we're going to give you, we're going to rate your bonds AAA. And why do we do that? Because we get our business from you. Everything will go perfectly. Don't worry about your derivative mortgage bonds because we've marked them AAA. That must mean they're great, right?
Well, that would work in the short term, certainly. But in the long term, you're going to lose trust as an organization, and people will no longer trust that rating agency to provide valid ratings for
Really?
And so a competitor can...
What are the name of the trading... Really? If that's the case, what are the name of the ratings agencies today? Are they any different than they were in 2006?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, I can tell you. They're not. And because your entire theory went out the window. Because they all rated...
Like, what does the government have to do with J.D. Power and Associates?
J.D. Power and Associates is not a bond rating agency. Listen, the bond rating. Listen, let me tell you a little story because I have a feeling that you're probably not old enough to remember this. And I'm not appealing to authority. I'm just telling you. Prior to 2008, when we had a massive financial crisis that caused the immiseration of millions of people and the loss of houses, right? You'll recall all the rating agencies were rating these bonds that were being sold as AAA bonds because they were so sound, that they were so sure to pay off, and they were
And
garbage.
what repercussions did they face for this fraud?
Virtually none.
Right, because the government is complicit in all of it.
The government, there was an attempt, the government, to decouple and to put restrictions on these agencies, but the corporate forces pushed back on it.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, Google Al Franken and bond rating agencies, and whether or not they should be able to be paid by their clients.
I mean,
that's the system you're suggesting, right? You're suggesting that the market actually pay for the arbitrators of what they're doing, whether it's a bond rating agency or whether it's dispute resolution or whatnot. And I would posit to you that there's about a half a dozen ways in which that goes sideways. One is that they don't have a monopoly of force, therefore no one listens to them. Or they're being paid by the people they're supposed to regulate, and they don't regulate properly because it's not in their financial interest to do so.
Why are those the only two options? Why couldn't it be that me, as an investor, I hire a completely independent rating agency to look at somebody's books before I make an investment?
Oh, you can have an auditor do that, and then I can have an auditor do that. But what if that company also? Well, excuse me. Let me finish. What agency would you? Let's just do hypothetical. ABC Accounting, right? Well, guess what, dude? I'm a company. You're just an investor. I hire ABC Accounting to do my books. Bingo.
But why is ABC the only company? I mean, in a free market, there'd be ABC, there'd be DEF, there'd be GHI, there'd be JKL.
Do they have to disclose to you who their other clients are?
I mean, if they want my business, then they would be wise to disclose all.
What
of
if
that.
they don't? How would you know?
Let me finish now. The companies that want my business would be as open as possible. They would have open books and say, these are our clients. This is who we pay for. Like, if they want my money as an investor, that's who I'm going to go with.
I got news for you. Me as a major corporation, I'm not going to hire ABC auditing if they're going to tell you who that they represent me. I would like a little client privilege. I would like a little bit of.
Is going to be the one that to go to.
I mean, and how do you know that they're actually? Are you saying there has to be a governmental law that they have to be transparent, or do you just guess that they're being transparent?
The market demands that they be transparent, and so if that is a market demand, then companies that want to make money.
What is the market? What do you mean the market demands? What does that mean? The market demands.
Market demand means that's what investors want. You're the market. I'm the market. Everybody is the market. Combined, we become the market. If the market wants, meaning you, me, any investor wants to invest in a company, then you can pick.
How does the market know that you're being? How does the market know that?
What? Go ahead.
How does the market, you, me, everybody? How do we know that? How do we know the company is telling us who all their clients are? They have no legal obligation to do so, correct?
Trust is huge. You know, how do you know that when you buy a package from Amazon, it's going to come delivered to your house and they're not just going to keep the money? That's how they stay in business long term.
Well, it's also illegal for them to do that.
It's good for them to build up trust with the community and have their ratings actually be worth something and not dog shit like government ratings.
Right. So according to you, that companies never do stuff that, like, for instance, like, you would never see a situation where, I don't know, somebody says, hey, this new form of opioids is not addictive, so you should prescribe it.
Well, I mean, you'd have to be a moron to believe it.
Do you know how many tens of thousands of people die each year now because they became addicted to that? Because doctors and because the distribution.
Do you have any idea how many morons die each year from self-inflicting, poison into their veins? Yeah,
okay.
I'm well aware.
Are you aware? So, how many morons would you say make up our society?
How many morons?
Oh, a lot. democracy is inherently immoral. Democracy is mob rule. I don't want to be ruled by morons.
I see.
People shouldn't even be allowed to vote. That's why I'm an
Who gets to choose who's the moron?
But you choose for yourself. I choose for myself. No, I don't choose for you. You know, you don't let morons rule your life. You rule your own life.
So
I have a moron. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to say one thing. I don't normally do this anymore. But right now I have a moron and a chief moron enabler ruling my life.
Well, there you go. I'm not going to defend Trump in this conversation.
I don't think that's what he meant.
Oh, well, if you're calling me a moron, then that's not an argument, because you fail to realize that I can be a moron and completely correct. Maybe I am a moron, but that doesn't make me wrong. If you want to tell me why I'm wrong, you have to make an actual argument.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you may be right that the vast majority of people in our society are morons, and that you think it's okay that by nature of them being morons, that they should be subject to things like addictive substances that end up killing them because that are prescribed by their doctor. By their doctor. Huh?
They're subjecting themselves to it.
So how many have you ever been to? Have you ever do you have a disease? Have you ever had to go and rely on a doctor for serious medical advice?
No, I take good care of myself. I don't have.
How old are you?
I'm not being.
How old are you?
I go jogging. I exercise.
How old are you?
My healthcare costs are effectively zero.
How old are you?
I am 32.
Okay. Now I got some bad news for you, Chief. As someone who's about 20 some odd years older than you are, it's coming. And you're going to go to your doctor, whether it's for whatever it is. Like, I mean,
the vast majority of healthcare costs are preventable. The leading cause of death in America is heart disease. It's perfectly preventable. I go jogging. I'm not going to have heart disease.
Okay.
Tell me, what am I going to suffer from when I get older?
Great. You're not going to have heart disease. Congratulations.
Why do you put me in a position like, yes, exercise and diet are very good and very important, and we should create a social system where everybody, including people like yourself, morons, can access those things. But, dude, you are not going to live. You're not going to be immortal because you eat a carrot. You know that, right?
Certainly. But I can absolutely extend my life and the quality of it.
So, but I think what Sam is saying is that at some
unless you have a
point,
genetic predisposition to cancer,
right,
and something like that. Now, presumably, let's just work. I got a little hypothetical for you. You have cancer. You have cancer because you are genetically predisposed now to cancer, and you go in to see your doctor. And your doctor says, I suggest that you do X, Y, or Z. And you say, well, I'm not a moron. I'm going to get a second opinion. And that doctor says, you should do TWX. And so you're like, well, they both said X. Do you really have the ability to assess, though, what's happening? I mean, we had doctors all across the country who were prescribing this for this medication for stuff that ultimately we found that they shouldn't. That the corporation absolutely knew was an addictive, far more addictive substance than they were suggesting to the doctors, that they were gaming research. We had an FDA that is not equipped and should be strengthened, and we should have stronger laws. We had we had a regulatory system which obligated the distributors of these drugs to report on spikes that they see in the way that this was being prescribed. But because corporations have cut away and eat away, and people are against government, excuse me, I'm not done. Because people like yourself think that it's unjust for a regulatory agency to tell a distributor how to do their business, we have weakened laws that did not allow for that reporting. So we didn't find out until way too late that, a town of 200 people are getting 1 million, Oxycontins, and that's almost a literal figure. being sold to them over the course of a couple of years. I mean, so now I know there's a ton of morons out there. But guess what? They live amongst us. So what do we do in a society where we have all these morons? Do we just wait for them to all die?
No, we remove their power altogether.
And so what, should we just use them for energy? Should we just like put them into some type of situation where we can suck their life force and use them for spare parts?
I don't follow. I mean, why should I be responsible for what they choose to put in their body?
Right. Well, I guess I guess
that we burn their bodies for fuel or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, that's their problem.
I see. All right.
I'm not going to get addicted to something that's an opiate. I'm not going to take that and put that in my body.
Okay. And you're sure you're not eating anything that's carcinogenic? How do you know this?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't. I've eaten some junk in my life.
Right. But what are you defining as junk? How do you know these things about nutrition?
Well, I mean, it's just basic evolution,
No, basic evolution? Well, obviously can't be basic evolution.
We evolved to eat certain things, like fruit. The reason fruit tastes good to us is because it has a source of nutrition that our body evolved to enjoy the taste of. Cats don't enjoy the taste of fruit. Cats are carnivores. They enjoy the taste of meat. Humans are omnivores. We can eat anything.
Right. Well, I mean, but my point is, how do you know about nutrition?
Well, I'm not a nutritionist, but I mean, I know that fruits and vegetables are good for you.
Why?
You got to get protein.
Why? Because they're sweet?
Protein.
You know they're good for you because they're sweet?
Well, corporations will abuse our body's taste for salt, sugar, and fat, three things that our bodies require nutritionally.
How do you know that our bodies require that nutritionally?
And corporations.
How do you know that our bodies require that nutritionally?
Let me finish. That corporations hack these necessary.
No, I know this. I know what you're saying. My audience knows this. They're not morons. But I'm asking you a question. How do you know what constitutes good nutrition?
Well, I guess I would have to talk to a nutritionist to know exactly.
How does the nutritionist know what constitutes good nutrition?
With oatmeal and almond milk, that's a healthy breakfast.
Listen. Maybe I am talking to one of those morons. I want you to listen to my question.
Well, that's not an argument.
Where does what we know about nutrition, where does that come from?
People who study the biological and chemical makeup of.
Where has the funding for the vast majority of that work come from?
Just because slaves grew all the cotton doesn't mean that cotton can't be grown without slaves. Like, you're making an argument that the government pays for these organizations to provide health and nutrition guidelines, but are you, like, I'm the moron here, but you fail to realize
cotton is a commodity what is the commodification of nutritional information? What is the broad? Cotton was a commodity such that it drove the economy of the world. How much of a market do you think there was 50 years ago for nutrition and even things like awareness about what cigarettes do to you?
Well, people who care, made it a point to find out.
People who care made it a point to find out? So you're suggesting that you would have the ability to do massive nutritional studies 50 years ago as a 32-year-old making whatever you're making today, that you would dedicate millions of dollars of your own money to finding that out? Or would you just rely on a fad diet book?
I mean, that's essentially what Tim Ferriss did. He's not a government agency. I mean, what's to stop anybody from doing this?
You don't think Tim Ferriss has based his research? You don't think Tim Ferriss bases experiments on the foundation of literally millions upon millions of dollars of government research that fund a huge percentage of his guests, frankly, on his show?
Well, why couldn't anybody else provide that research? Why can't people voluntarily provide these things?
Who?
Why does it have to be sourced from stolen money?
Why didn't they?
because the government steals money and does it. It's hard to compete with that. It's not a free market. If it was a free market, then
if it was a free market, everybody would be eating like a paleo diet or an Atkins diet or the Hollywood diet. And that's what we would learn everything our nutrition from. Although, of course, a lot of that is based upon governmental work, too.
Well, right. It's hard to compete with, somebody who goes around stealing money from people. In a free market, if the market has a demand for this service,
I've been doing the Bonanno family diet. It's Mediterranean based. They stole the money from bookies for the research.
I mean, look, I follow his argument in this very isolated part of the debate, right? Like it's kind of like when people say to me, oh, you're against capitalism and yet you have a phone and that was created by capitalism.
Absolutely.
Like that's the dominant mode of
it's the
production.
same
That's
argument.
how we make things right now.
The same argument.
That doesn't mean that we could not also produce phones under a different mode of production called communism.
Well, we could produce that would involve a lot of taxation. So let me ask you this. What does the word steal mean?
To take something involuntarily.
Without legal right or permission. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's the dictionary definition. I know where you're going with that.
Oh, okay. What is the definition that you have in your own particular language?
Say that again? I didn't hear you.
Do we have to all subscribe to your language, or are you just going to go by what the dictionary means?
I have my own language credit agency.
I mean, you're using the word steal because you want to say that the government is taking the money from me, you personally, and don't like it.
Take it right out of my paycheck. I don't hand it over to them.
Right. I understand how taxation
if I
works.
stole money out of somebody else's paycheck, it would be stealing. But if the government does it, then it's not stealing all of a sudden.
That's correct.
I don't get
You're not a representative governing body.
That's correct. That's correct. There are two different things. Government is different from you.
Why is the government different from me?
Because
what special are they magic? Is the government a magical entity that has different rights than I do?
Am I magical? Because I'm also different from you.
Well, you are your own person, but the government is magical because you can't steal from anybody either. If you stole from your neighbor, the government
The government
will come after you. The government can steal from you and your neighbor.
The government.
You're not magic. The government is magic.
Society has organized in such a way where they feel that the only competent way and efficient way to help as many people in society as possible is to designate an authority that we limit in terms of what they can do. We limit through what we call civil liberties. There are limitations that are built into the Constitution. There are mechanisms for the people to limit the government's authority. Happens all the time.
How good is that Constitution working out in Iran right now?
In Iran?
Yeah, the Iranian situation. How's that Constitution working out for that?
How's the Constitution working out? How's our Constitution working for it?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, we're not.
Like congressional approval, like the Constitution says we're supposed to?
No, I agree. There needs to be congressional approval for it.
Nobody's obligated to follow anything on it.
So
what's anybody going to do? It's just ink on paper.
Well,
that can't be the place that we draw. That's an appeal to authority. You have to make an argument from first principles.
So you're saying that logic from first principles. If I make a logical argument, then Donald Trump won't bomb Iran.
Wait, say that again?
If I make a logical argument, then Donald Trump won't bomb Iran. Is that what you're saying?
No, unless Iran personally attacked us on our homeland, then there is no reason to attack Iran.
I agree.
Wait, we want to talk
That's just an opinion. It's your opinion. It's my opinion, too.
I have my own credit agency.
We want to talk about first principles. I would like to know that you and I are operating within the same ethical framework. And the way you seem to think about other human beings does not convince me that we are. Like, I believe that we have a collective responsibility to everyone in society, and that none of us are free until all of us are free. And we have a responsibility to provide a decent life for everyone.
Why do I have a responsibility to provide a decent life for somebody who's 400 pounds overweight on diabetes medication, can't even walk? Why is that my responsibility?
For the same reason I have to listen to you on this call, because
we're all in this together.
Let me just explain how arbitrary your perspective
Call
is.
JD Powers and
I mean,
Associates.
Jamie's is
He's a fat
arbitrary.
guy.
No, it's arbitrary. It is arbitrary. Jamie's is arbitrary, but yours is arbitrary. Why can't I come and hold on? Why can't I come? Why can't I come and blow your face off?
Because that would be a violation of my property rights.
But dude, why do I care about your property rights? That's not part of my first principle. My first principle says your property rights don't count for crap. My first principles in this universe that we're talking about, this hypothetical, that anybody I think is a moron, I can blow their face off with a gun.
So you're advocating slavery and might makes right.
I'm advocating might makes right. Yeah. In this hypothetical. In this hypothetical.
You're a slaver. That's
I'm a slaver.
Good argument.
I'm a slaver. I'm a slaver.
arguing from property rights.
What?
Everybody has an individual.
Wait. You're arguing
right
for property
to their
rights,
property.
and you're calling me a slaver? I got some bad news for you, buddy. I get some very bad news for you about what slaveholders thought. But be that as it may, my point is that what you're taking is an arbitrary position, and I'm suggesting
my position is not arbitrary.
Yes, it is. You've just decided what your first principles are, but they're arbitrary. They didn't come from God. They're not etched in stone.
You don't know what my first principles are.
It doesn't matter what they are.
Well,
all first principles are arbitrary.
If you don't even know what they are, and it doesn't matter what they are, you're not making any argument.
All first principles are arbitrary.
No, they're not.
Of course they are.
Is gravity arbitrary?
Gravity is not a principle. It is a physical trait.
First principles comes from physics.
Okay, what's the physics?
What's your first principle then?
You can apply it to
What's your
philosophy.
first principle?
Well, first principles is just working out things.
What is the scientific basis for your first principle?
Do they exist somewhere out in space?
Wait, I just want to hear this. I want to hear, like, what is the scientific, that in the absence of man, right? Because you're talking about a physical property. In the absence of man, tell me about your first principles.
Yeah, the place that I am arguing that rights come from is what you're born with. You are born.
I just said you're talking about physics to me. You said that they're physics. You just compared your first principles to gravity. And I want to know, in the absence of man, of humanity, what first principles exist that you're talking about?
Yeah, what scientific instruments can you use?
Wait. Okay, hold on. Let me repeat the question, because every time I finish it, what first principle exists in the absence of man? Like gravity.
Property. You have a right to.
How can property exist if it is a relationship between the physical world and man? How can that exist before man exists?
Animals have property rights too.
All right, then animals. Let's say animals don't exist.
Yeah, that's why I'm a vegan.
There it is.
Don't vegetables have property rights?
Sam's head just exploded.
Why would vegetables have property rights?
They're alive. They exist.
No, actually, I actually have a very. Oh my God, I'm in this.
How can they exist?
I'll explain precisely. No, look at what the Jains say. They have a more coherent worldview than you do. They don't eat food that does not. They only eat. Some of them only eat fruits or nuts because they fall from the trees. They aren't picked, and they wear surgical masks so they don't accidentally breathe in bugs. So you're basically genocidal. You're committing genocide right now. Do you have a surgical mask on? Do you have a surgical mask on? Do you have a surgical mask on? You're violating the property rights of bugs, and I demand that this call end because I'm losing my property rights. Right now.
I realize that it's,
Because Sam is a slaver.
I will let you have the final say.
I'm not really able to get a word in edgewise in any of this.
Because you can't answer it. Because you're violating my
you guys
property
want a
rights.
conversation, I would love to provide it, but nobody's allowing
here's
me
the
to
last.
make any arguments.
You have the last word. Last word.
Crapping all over me.
Last word. Last word.
All right. Taxation is theft. The government is inherently evil and immoral.
Okay. Thank you for the call.
Wow, what a perfect synthesis of all the debates that we like
We're
to
wrapped
have.
up. We really rolled this week into a.
Did you know gravity is like saying taxation is theft?
I did not.
That's what they're trying to find out at CERN with the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson is a very possessive subparticle, subatomic particle.
You know, I was
do the
talking on
post-roll.
Twitter with somebody last night who's a vegan and an animal lover and a lover of humanity, and they said that they're convinced that having compassion for animals can teach people to have compassion for other people. I think what this caller shows us is not necessarily.
That's true too.
I think what these vegan callers are
All right, hold on.
showing is that
Let me
there's
just
essential
do this.
nutrients that
Let
we're
me just do
losing.
this post roll. The way end? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to forget, though. All right. All right. We need a palate cleanser. I bring you. Now, there's a certain symmetry here. We're about less than a month away from the Iowa caucus. And we're also less than a month away from the Super Bowl. And on the Super Bowl, I know everybody loves to watch for the commercials because the commercials are so funny on the Super Bowl. And they only tell you the truth. Otherwise, because if they didn't tell you anything but the truth, you would never use those businesses. And because over time, they would all go out of business because the market's always right.
Oreos would never lie to you.
Exactly. And on this Super Bowl, we're going to see two commercials from two people who never lie and are only telling you the truth because otherwise they wouldn't have the money to spend on these commercials because they couldn't have possibly amassed the money. And that, of course, is Donald Trump and Michael Bloomberg, each spending $10 million on ads to support their candidacies. And so you know they're telling the truth because otherwise the market would have punished them already. And they wouldn't have the money to spend on these ads. So the beauty of that relationship is
they
that
have sterling reputations they need to maintain. They never not pay somebody for services rendered.
right,
as an example.
of course. And of course, this isn't the first time that these two are going to find themselves back to back on TV. In fact, it was only back in, I don't know, when was this? The mid-2000s, where they both appeared with the entire clan of the Trump family, Eric, Don Jr., and Ivanka, and Omarosa on The Celebrity Apprentice. And here I give you Mike Bloomberg and Donald Trump and Stephen Baldwin on The Apprentice.
Oh, God. Ladies, Mr. Trump is here. Be calm, cool, and professional. Great mayor. Oh, my gosh. Mayor Bloomberg and Donald Trump paid to visit you. It was the highlight of this task for me.
He's going to testify as the #1 Francophile in the city.
Francophile.
I'm supposed to see whether you guys can cut the mustard.
All right, then.
It's like he loves it.
I can't tell whether these are better or worse than the one the men's are selling until I have a hot dog with the men. I can tell you this without seeing the men, you guys look better.
Meet Donald Trump, everybody! Meet the mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg! Hey, Mayor Bloomberg, how are you, sir? Very nice of you gentlemen to come by.
Oh, that's Gene Simmons.
The question is this the best hot dog, or is the best hot dog sold by all of those gorgeous
Baldwin?
women at the last hot dog stand? Very good.
I'll bet he'll never reveal the answer. And that's why you're the mayor of New York.
And that's your 2016 president and 2020.
And I'm proud
Oh
to
my
be
God!
an American.
I just like
Return
honestly,
mayor.
right? Like it doesn't like. I'm watching that and I'm thinking we're going to be responsible for a mass suicide. I mean, this is like the
In a decade, they'd be able to kill the entire
This
planet.
is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with this stupid ass hot dog segment.
I'm a Francophile.
Everybody stay cool, calm, and collected. Mr. Trump is
Said no one
Professional.
ever.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Just unbelievable. Let's go to the phones again. God. This guy's been holding calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is Jeff from Georgia. Hello there.
Jeff from Georgia. How's it going?
Hey, man, it's going. I feel a bit like I got hit by a lightning bolt that last call, man. That was something fantastical, I got to tell you. I have no idea how I'm going to compete with any of that in any way. But honestly, I called because, people could hear it in your voice a little bit that last call. Sam, I can tell you're a bit of a hard-eyed realist about the world. You not a lot of room in your heart for magic, miracles, right?
Maybe a little bit.
He believes in government magic.
He believes in
As do we
MMT,
all.
which some people think is magic.
It's a lot. But really I was calling about, yesterday you were describing a little bit of a TV program called The Witcher. Not a real big fan of fantasy, I gather, magic, mystery, fables, and fairy tales. Sam, I'd like to tell you a little fairy tale now. It's mostly true.
Please.
Once upon a time, Sam, there was a Bangladeshi factory owner enthusiast. And he was a haver of a very large brain, Sam. And he was not very popular. He was not very cool. Some might refer to him uncharitably as some sort of nerd, Sam. And I got to tell you, you saw this nerd. He was going up and down the Twitter, up and down online, just posting about Bangladeshi factory owners and their right to keep a factory that, for example, could perhaps kill hundreds of people if it were to collapse or set on fire in some way because of the lack of safety regulations, and that was okay. And I got to tell you, that nerd, that big-brained haver, that Bangladeshi factory enthusiast defender, he's a Bernie Sanders supporter now, Sam. He is bent the knee.
Iglesias, man.
He has submitted to the successful online bullying of a pack of rabid, awesome, cool, sex-having socialists into supporting Bernie Sanders for president. Sam, if that ain't a goddamn miracle, I don't know what is. What say you to that?
Are you talking about Matthew Iglesias basically writing
That
the
is
other day?
indeed who I am referring. That's indeed who I am referring to.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
I don't know that I would call him a Bernie enthusiast, but he does believe that Bernie has the best chance of winning the presidency from Donald Trump, and B, he thinks that Bernie Sanders has the best chance of getting any type of, and I think he feels that it will not be, necessarily close to what Sanders aspires to in terms of legislation. But he thinks Bernie Sanders has the best chance of getting any legislation passed with a Republican Senate, because he believes that Sanders will have the ability to deliver parts of the party that a Biden or a Klobuchar or a Warren or a Buttigieg, I guess an ostensibly, Booker and Yang or whoever, wouldn't be able to deliver. So his is a very pragmatic argument for Bernie, one which, I think some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, but I like where it lands. And so, yes, I'm quite excited about that.
Wow, way to take all the magic out of it.
See, that's it. I just drained it of magic.
Oh, that's all right. Still, my favorite podcast host, my favorite. Speaking of magic, by the way, the last time I called, I said something that then immediately became true, and I'd like to try to exercise this newfound power. And I'd just like to say on the show, on the record, I predict more knees being bent like Matthew Iglesias, who's looking mighty fine there. I can't wait to see him conspicuously display his new support for Bernie Sanders. We will be watching you.
There you go.
So delicious.
Y'all have a good one.
Appreciate the
Yeah!
Indeed.
I would encourage as much humility as possible in when those gifts are delivered. Gloating not helpful.
I know, but it's so hard not to.
Well, gloat, but don't do it online, or do it offline. That's what I would offer, because first of all, none of this is over by a long shot. It hasn't really even begun in earnest. But also, for this to happen, everybody needs to be on board. And, I think I wish that, like our caller earlier, that I have an assessment that there are a lot of morons out there. But I accept the existence of them and understand that they have every right to exist and enjoy our existence as I do. And sometimes people, react to petty things and apply them to their decision making on larger, more relevant things. And so that is why I'm so adamant about all of supporters of any candidate really should behave in a way that ultimately has the most chance to bring the most amount of people on board.
Like online bullying might have helped in some ways.
I don't know about
different
that.
tactics are effective on different people.
Before they turn to Bernie, of course, bully him like crazy.
Right.
Like, hey guys, we did it.
But you need to have both a carrot and a stick.
And once they turn, you say,
or a
welcome
stick and a
to
carrot.
the fold.
Exactly.
Welcome to the Antifada, where unrest is best.
Calling from a 647 area code. I haven't heard that. 647?
Hi, good afternoon, Sam. This is Abhishek.
Abhishek, where are you calling from?
Canada.
Canada? What's on your mind?
Just a few things. I'll give you guys a sample and you can tell me which one you like. I was in Kuwait when the Iraq War happened.
Okay.
I was also part of the Farmington University scandal, where ICE set up 650 students and then proceeded to deport them. And I'm also very involved with the Indian left and what's going on with Kashmir and India abroad, India in general, where a lot of fire has been happening locally. Which one do you want me to go for?
Oh, that's a hard decision to make, to be honest with you.
The
ICE one is I have to say, but I sort of feel like we don't hear enough about what is happening in Kashmir.
Okay.
Let's start with Kashmir, and if we have time, we'll get to the ICE thing.
Well, first, solidarity with the water board from Kashmir. As an upper caste Hindu, I think it's important to stand for the Muslim brothers and sisters, what they're going through. Kashmir has been in complete lockdown from internet and telephone services for about 56 days now. This means that everybody has to take trains to the nearest village that has some ability and fill out essential paperwork for schooling, university applications. Many doctors are used. My dad's a doctor, and they're used to sending messages on WhatsApp to other doctors to consult, send pictures of potential issues. And all of that is now under complete block in Kashmir. The doctors are unable to function. They're unable to correspond with any of their other doctors in Mumbai or New Delhi.
Wow.
So there's if anybody wants to know what brutality Indian Army can do, just look up the Google Kashmir and half widow. The thousands of Kashmiri men who never came back, mostly from atrocities committed by the Indian Army. And a lot of the reports are slowly coming out in what's happening, including one today where a boy was run over by an army officer driving a Jeep. He was 16 years old. The family is in absolute depression. They've started installing alcohol checks in army Jeeps because it's common for military. I wouldn't say it's common. It happens that military people in Indian Kashmir get drunk and drive. Right now, there's universities that are protesting against the CAA and the NRC. These are two acts that are coming in direct back to back, which are meant to isolate the existing Muslims in the country. And every state which is BJP ruled, Bharatiya Janata Party leading, they have brutalized and hit back at the students. Coming from this has been the true power of India, the Indian woman. Whether it's Bollywood heroines who stood up against all bad words and insults, or it's regular Indian women of 18 to 20 years old who have stood in front of sticks charged by policemen. It's a true testament that the gender that's the bravest has been women, both in the U.S. and as well as India. This fire doesn't seem to be going down anytime soon. It's 4.5 more years of BJP rule, which are bent on establishing their Hindutva ideology in India. And it seems like a long road before the fire will be put out. Right now, it's the Constitution of India.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's the Constitution of India that grants no bias on gender, caste, creed, or color, or race, or religion, versus what Hindutva wants, which is the idea of Hinduism and upper caste, mostly middle class to upper middle class idea. And it's disturbing, and it's also heartening and enlightening that students have come out and people of all faiths.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are you aware of, like, how? And I know there was just over the weekend, I think there was 1 million people who came out and protested against what's happening in terms of isolating and I don't know what you would call it, delegitimizing Muslims in the country. Is your sense that that there is, are things fracturing in terms of support for the BJP, or do you feel like where would you put that? What's the trend, I guess?
Yeah, so there have been multi-million people marches in Bombay, some in Kerala, many states which do not have BJP ruled. The police have been great and have allowed the march to go silently. Many of these marches include national patriotic songs, as well as poetry and couplets that people have written indicating that the revolution is here. So it's very good to see. This has been a huge blow. I don't think they expected it to happen. When Article 370 was imposed on Kashmir, there wasn't much of a fight back, mainly because in general, their information is very less. And then they put one other thing, I can't remember off the top of my head, which they were able to pass. So when they passed this CAA Act, they did not expect this to go down. And the optics for BJP has been brutal. Their Twitter accounts have been getting more and more desperate. Just like in America, where there's a boycott that happens when an actor takes a certain position. Deepika Padukone, she's the most famous actress in Bollywood, has come up with a movie called Chapak. It's based on an acid survivor story, what she did post her acid brutality. And the BJP right wing has, of course, said to boycott it. It's not working really well, and they've gone to desperate attempts to make it trending on Twitter. Just like in Brazil, where Jair Bolsonaro ran an effective WhatsApp campaign, the BJP has been very effective disseminating disinformation through WhatsApp. And it has kind of put a spell on the middle class, 300 to 400 million strong in India, on just like in America, how the Christian right is always under threat, right? Just imagine the Hindu is always under threat in India, even though 85% of the population is Hindu. Yeah.
Interesting. That's fascinating stuff. Tell me the Farmington story quickly, because that's also you presented me with 3 options that were all, frankly, pretty compelling.
Thanks, Sam. I'll quickly tell the Farmington. I was enrolled in the university for about a year, and one of the very interesting things is if you ever go into these universities, they'll never outright tell you that this is a fraudulent something.
So wait a second. Let me just be clear on something. And will you turn down the speaker? I'm getting an echo. Let me just be clear on something. The university was actually functioning as a university. This wasn't a situation where people were just invited to enroll and then enrolled in something that didn't exist, and then ICE basically said, "Oh, well, I mean, just give us a little bit of background."
Yeah, sorry, I might have misworded it. No, when I meant when you go to when you converse with them via email, I happened to see Farmington asking people to join it on some random website. I can send you the website to majorityreporters@gmail.com if needed.
Yeah,
I saw it on a random website.
What were you were in this country from Canada? Is that right? I mean, tell me, like, what was your situation and status, and why you sought out this university? What you thought was a university?
I was finishing up my master's from a different university, and I applied for something called an H-1B visa. That allows you to stay in the country on a work visa. My H-1B did not come through, and my master's at the current university I was at was finishing up. So I looked online to see what I can possibly do to do a day one CPT. Now I'm going in a little bit of immigration here, but what that means is for any international student, they can only work 20 hours a week part-time. They can't do anything full-time. They can't do 40 hours. So what a day one CPT, called curriculum practical training, allows you to do is work 40 hours per week, essentially a full-time job. So if you enrolled into Farmington University, you would become a student on a F1 visa, student visa, but you're eligible under the law to work 40 hours a week full-time.
I see. So the idea was that your intention was, I've gotten my master's, I might as well get another degree because that other degree will allow me to work simultaneously, and I'll work and I'll go to school.
Right. H1 gets released every year. So if I missed this year's H1, I can do this for 1 year and then try again the next year.
I see. So you figured, why not go to school for a while, get some extra education? It'll allow me to work, and it will put me into a position where I can try and pick up an HB1 visa in a year. Okay, I get it.
Right. Yeah, and so this isn't cheap, right? So you're paying university fees. On top of that, you're also paying taxes on any income you earn. So more than 60 to 70% of your whatever you earn is basically gone. You're living quite on the edge, just hoping that 1 year passes and you stay and you can apply again. Prior to this, anytime there's been any raid on any university that's done a day one CPT, they only arrested the functional people. This was the first time they went for everybody. It never happened before.
What do you mean the functional people? What do you mean by the functional people?
So prior to this, there has been universities like Tri-Valley State. You can look it up. It was, I think, California-based, and it was run mainly by Chinese people. They basically ran the same concept, where they say, we'll give you classes and we will do your student visa, but there wasn't really any classes going on. There was just one building. It was kind of like a very social environment where there wasn't a lot of teaching. This was about 10 years ago. And when it happened to Tri-Valley State, the ICE or whoever the officers, they only arrested the people who were running the whole scam, who were the immigration law. Yeah.
In this instance, there was no people running the scam. It was ICE who was running the scam,
right?
And the students. And so when you signed up for this college, did you assume, like, I'm just going to basically like a community center? I'll go, I'll hang out, I'll play some video games there, I'll get a sandwich, and then, or did you think that you were actually going to go and take some classes?
Correct. The idea was I'll take some classes. We were waiting for where should we start logging in online, what email will we get from the university, my name at universityoffarmington.edu, and, we start sending in our stuff. That never came through.
Wow. So somehow they divined your intention by signing up for a university that you thought was real, that you thought that you were signing up for a fake sort of like front, as it were.
And here's the trick, what they said, what I was telling to you before. Any other university, if this has happened, they would never tell you upfront that, sir, this is a scam or this is a trick. It would kind of be understood within the lines, like in The Godfather, where he says, if something happens to my family, I understand,
Right.
Here, I was specifically told, you understand, Mr. Vermo, what we're doing is not right, and this is against the law. Something to that effect. It stuck in my mind because it's very obvious you wouldn't say that if you were trying to keep it under the radar. And I think that's what they're using. The fact that they've mentioned this to every student, and therefore every student knew.
Wait, so I don't understand. So they told you what they were doing was illicit?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, in that instance, I mean, how do you justify, like, why did you go forward after you knew that it was illicit?
Yeah, there's no justification other than desperation to stay in the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the basis. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, at that point it becomes, I understand the story. I mean, I don't think that I should be in that business. Frankly, it seems like entrapment to me, but because they're providing the entire opportunity for you to break the law. But if they tell you that what we're doing is not kosher, then I suppose I can understand from their perspective how they justified that.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with the immigration laws that were changed post 9/11. A lot of the things were made more tougher, and it's if they could clear up the immigration laws a bit more, it would really ease the pressure on many people who have.
Well,
to
of course, but they're not going to do that. I mean, aside
Right.
from the sort of like the technical legality of what they've done, these are horrible human beings. And the idea that that we are expending these type of resources for people who want to stay in the country because they want to work or because they want to study is just it's demented. It's a demented perspective. I mean, and I think like I can understand why. I mean, I personally feel that we should be basically welcoming everybody, with a process. But I can understand at the very least, like, why people are like, hey, we should have, immigrants come through a process. But the idea that like we wouldn't welcome people who are just trying to.
I'm sorry, not to interject, and hopefully you can call in again. I'd like to talk with you about actually the Punjab and the Sikhs protesting what's happening. But just listening to this, I have to ask you, do you have any first principles about this stuff?
Nice.
All right, well, appreciate the call. Call back in.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
No first principles.
No first principles.
All right. We got time. Here is now that we're on. Let's play this clip from. This is from Frontline. They'll probably ding us for this. You think? Let's put it out separate. We'll do it afterwards. We'll put it out separately. I'll play one more phone call, or take one more phone call, and then we're gonna go out. I know we have a lot of people who have been on the phone for over 2 hours. A couple of people. Calling from 131 area code. 314 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, this is Josh. I'm in Philly.
Josh in Philly, you are the final caller of the day.
Oh, sweet, man. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to elicit some positivity today, given all the shit that's going on, and with Iran, and so I woke up and I smoked a big joint and went to the DMV.
Great. I hope you didn't take a driving lesson. Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, I needed a new driver's license, so I went there, had a great conversation. It was very efficient, fast.
Yep.
And had an excellent time. And I just wanted to let the libertarian callers know that I had such a great time doing that.
I gotta say,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm with you on this. Like, I remember, 20 years ago going to the DMV before things were computerized and waiting in line for 45 minutes and this and that. But in the past, like 10, 15 years, I'm thinking maybe 25 years ago, the past 10 or 15 years, I go to the DMV, with some, I've gone, maybe once a year, maybe, or maybe once every 2 years. And I have found it rather pleasant. I mean, no more or less difficult than going to the supermarket or something, frankly.
It's a really
Yeah,
good
I had a
analogy.
great
It's
conversation
fine.
with someone next to me. It was excellent.
Oh,
Excellent.
also post office. Anytime you go to a post office, my experience is that the people who work there are incredibly helpful.
Yep.
The passport office, pretty much any government building, really.
Yep. And I also want to say that I think vegetables have property rights as well.
I appreciate that.
Except for rutabaga because, well, it's dirty and doesn't take care of itself. But
It's the moron of vegetables.
Yeah.
Why should I be?
Appreciate the
There's
call.
some type of bizarre psychedelic cartoon with some broccoli. Be like, why should I be responsible for him?
Yeah, I was listening to that on the way home, walking home from the DMV. I was like, huh, interesting.
Right.
Vegetables, property rights. But also just, so I study foreign policy history.
Yeah. Oh, shit. You there?
You cut that guy off.
No. I
You
didn't
give
mean
first principles guy 20 minutes. And
30.
we
I
get
didn't mean
we get
to.
a charming
I didn't mean to.
stoner who studies
I didn't
IR
mean to.
history and he's gone. Please call back, man.
Shoot. All right, let's play this clip and then we'll, because this is important. So, Jerry Connolly, and where is Connolly from? From Virginia, Democratic rep. I presume, I'm not sure what committee he's on, but he just got out of a briefing on Iran from a Trump administration official. Here is his response. Apparently, he wasn't terribly impressed.
And then there's the whole Hezbollah content. My reaction to this briefing was it was sophomoric and utterly unconvincing. And I believe more than ever, the Congress needs to act to protect the constitutional provisions about war and peace.
What can you say about the rationale for the strike on Soleimani and also the idea of whether there were imminent threats?
I believe there was no rationale that could pass a graduate school thesis test. I was, utterly unpersuaded about any evidence about the imminence of a threat that was new or compelling.
The legal rationale that was delivered to you, is that
The legal rationale absolutely fell in the category of sophomoric. The citation was Article 2 of the Constitution and the 2002 AUMF authorization for the use of military force, which of course had nothing to do with Iran. It had to do with what happened after 9/11.
The administration could contend that it does not need a new AUMF, but further military.
Again, I won't comment on content of the briefing because that's classified.
All right, we don't need to hear anything else. I mean, there you have it.
That's solid communication.
You do not, as a congressperson, walk out of a briefing and say that was a joke. This is sophomoric. We should have hearings, unless it was a sophomoric joke that you just heard. You do not put yourself on the line when there is no wiggle room whatsoever there. And so there you have it. All right, folks. I apologize to callers, but we got to get out of here. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better.
Hey, folks, before we get out of here, just want to remind you, Capterra is the free online resource that millions use monthly to find the best software solution for their business. They have more than 700 categories. You can search all of them with all the info and data you need in one place. And guess what? It's free. Totally free. Visit Capterra.com/majority for free today. Find the tools to make an informed software decision for your business. And like I say, 700 different businesses you never even heard of. There's apparently a lot of software for it. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA.com/majority. Capterra, software selection simplified.